Hello, today we're going to review the fundamental rules to obtain your Hazmat endorsement in Ohio. This state follows strict federal guidelines to ensure the safety of our roads, so let's get you ready to pass that exam on the first try. Here are the key questions for the Ohio Hazmat test. Where must the shipping papers be kept while the driver is in the seat? In the driver's door pouch or in clear view within reach. Emergency responders need to find these immediately if you are unable to help them. Let's continue. A vehicle placarded for hazardous materials must stop how far from a railroad track? 15 to 50 feet. Always stop, look, and listen. Do not shift gears while actually crossing the tracks. Next question. Which hazard class requires placards regardless of the amount being transported? Division 1.1 Explosives. As a Table 1 material, these are so high risk they must be identified even if you're only carrying a small amount. Let's move on. Who is responsible for certifying on the shipping paper that the cargo was prepared properly? The shipper. The shipper must sign the papers to legally certify that everything is packaged, marked, and labeled correctly. Continuing. How often must you check the tires on a placarded vehicle with dual tires? Every 2 hours or 100 miles. Checking frequently prevents tire fires, which are a major danger when hauling hazardous cargo. Next point. You should never smoke within how many feet of a placarded vehicle of explosives or flammables? 25 feet. Ohio law is very strict here. Keep all smoking materials and open flames far away from the vehicle. Let's keep going. What is the identification number, UN or NUN number, used for? To identify the specific material for emergency responders. This 4-digit number allows responders to immediately look up the correct safety protocols in their guidebooks. Next question. Where should placards be placed on a vehicle? On all 4 sides of the vehicle. They must be visible from the front, rear, and both sides so the hazard is clear from any direction. Let's continue. What is a safe haven? An approved place for parking unattended vehicles with explosives. These are specifically designated, secure areas where high-risk loads can be left briefly without a driver present. Next point. If you discover a leaking package of hazardous materials, you should stop and call for help immediately. Do not continue driving a leaking vehicle unless moving it is the only way to reach a safer area. Let's move on. What is the Emergency Response Guidebook, ERG, used for? To identify hazard risks and safety procedures. It's the essential manual used by drivers and first responders during the first 30 minutes of a hazmat incident. Continuing. What does the RQ on a shipping paper stand for? Reportable quantity. This means if that material spills in that specific amount, you are legally required to notify federal authorities. Next question. Who is responsible for providing the correct placards for the vehicle? The shipper. While the driver is responsible for displaying them, the shipper must provide the correct placards to the driver. Let's keep going. When transporting hazardous waste, what must you have in addition to shipping papers? A uniform hazardous waste manifest. This document tracks waste from its point of origin all the way to its final disposal site. Next point. What color is the placard for a flammable gas Class 2? Red. Red is the universal warning color for flammables, helping responders identify the risk at a glance. Let's continue. A hazard class name or ID number must not be used on shipping papers for non-hazardous materials. Using hazmat terms for safe goods causes dangerous confusion and can lead to heavy fines. Next question. What is the maximum distance you can park a placarded vehicle from a bridge or tunnel? 300 feet. Keeping your distance protects critical infrastructure in case your load catches fire or explodes. Let's move on. If a shipping paper has an X in the HM column, what does it mean? The entry is a hazardous material. The X or RQ alerts you to which items on a mixed cargo list are regulated as hazardous. Continuing. What should you do if your vehicle is leaking hazmat and you are in a populated area? Move the vehicle only as far as necessary to reach a safe area. Your goal is to get away from people and water sources without spreading the leak further than necessary. Next point. How many different hazard classes are defined by the dot? 9. These range from explosives class 1 to miscellaneous class 9. Let's keep going. Which document lists the hazard class and ID number for every regulated material? The Hazardous Materials Table. This is the master list found in the Federal Regulations 49 CFR that every hazmat driver must understand. Next question. What must be on the shipping paper if the material is a poison inhalation hazard? The words poison inhalation hazard. This warns everyone that a leak could create a deadly toxic cloud. Let's continue. When are you allowed to use a fire extinguisher on a hazmat fire? Only if you can do so without putting yourself in danger. Safety first. If the fire is large or involves the cargo itself, evacuate and wait for professionals. Next point. What is the purpose of the segregation table? To show which materials cannot be loaded together. Certain chemicals react violently if mixed, so they must be kept apart in the trailer. Let's move on. If you are carrying 100 pounds of Division 4.3 materials, do you need to stop at railroad crossings? Yes. Division 4.3 dangerous when wet materials require a mandatory stop at all railroad tracks regardless of the weight. Continuing. Where should the shipping papers be if the driver is not in the vehicle? On the driver's seat or in the door pouch? Responders are trained to look in these two specific places first. Next question. What does the marine pollutant mark look like? A fish and a tree with an X through them. This mark identifies materials that are exceptionally harmful to fish and water ecosystems. Let's keep going. Who is responsible for finding out if a permit is needed for a specific route? The carrier. The trucking company must ensure all routes are legal and all necessary permits are obtained before the trip. Next point. What is the rule for floor liners when hauling explosives? They must be non-ferrous or covered with wood. Non-ferrous means it won't create sparks, which is vital when moving sensitive explosives. Let's continue. When can you move a leaking vehicle? Only if moving it is safer than leaving it. For example, moving it away from a hospital or a busy intersection to an empty field. Next question. Which hazard class is represented by a yellow placard? Oxidizers. Yellow signifies materials that provide oxygen to a fire, making it much harder to put out. Let's move on. What is a reportable quantity RQ? The amount of material that requires calling the National Response Center if spilled. Every regulated chemical has a specific RQ weight that triggers mandatory federal reporting. Continuing. When hauling hazmat, what should you do before starting a trip? Check that the shipping papers are correct and the load is secure. You are the final safety check before that vehicle enters public roads. Next point. What should you do if your trailer begins to sway while hauling hazmat? Slow down gradually and keep the vehicle steady. Avoid sudden braking, which can make a sway turn into a jackknife or rollover. Let's keep going. How many identical placards must a vehicle display? 4. Front, back, and both sides, they must all be exactly the same and match the cargo. Next question. Which of these is a prohibited smoking area when loading flammable liquids? Within 50 feet of the vehicle. The 50-foot rule is specifically for the loading and unloading process when vapors are most likely to be present. Let's continue. If you see a placard with a skull and crossbones, what is the hazard? Poison. This identifies substances that are toxic if swallowed, inhaled, or touched. Next point. What should you use to signal other drivers if you break down at night? Reflective triangles. Never use flares or fusees around a hazmat vehicle. The open flame is too dangerous. Let's move on. What is the purpose of the dome cover on a tank? To provide access for loading and inspection. It also seals the tank to prevent leaks and houses important safety valves. Continuing. When can you leave a placarded vehicle unattended? Only in a safe haven or if the job requires it. Most high-risk loads require constant attendance by the driver or a qualified observer. Next question. Which of these is a sign of a leaking tank? Wet spots around the dome cover or valves. Always check your fittings during your pre-trip. Even a small sweat can be a violation. Let's keep going. What must you do if you are involved in a collision while hauling hazmat? Follow the emergency response plan and notify authorities. Every driver should have a specific plan from their carrier to follow during an accident. Next point. When can you transport hazardous materials in a rental truck? Only if it meets all safety and placarding rules. A rental truck must follow the exact same safety regulations as any other commercial vehicle. Let's continue. If a shipping paper describes both hazardous and non-hazardous materials, how must the hazmat be listed? First, or highlighted or marked with an X. The hazardous items must stand out so they aren't missed during an inspection or an emergency. Next question. What is a non-bulk package? A container with a capacity of 119 gallons or less. This includes drums, pails, and boxes rather than large cargo tanks. Let's move on. What should you do if your vehicle thumps or vibrates heavily? Pull over and check for a flat or loose tire. On a hazmat vehicle, a thumping tire can quickly become a burning tire. Continuing. What is the main purpose of the hazardous materials regulations? To communicate the risk and ensure safe transport. The rules exist to make sure everyone involved, from the shipper to the first responder, knows the danger. Next point. Which hazard class is represented by a white placard? Poisons. White is the primary background color for poison and radioactive placards. Let's keep going. When must a driver receive hazmat training? Within 90 days of employment and every 3 years. Keeping your training current is a legal requirement for keeping your endorsement. Next question. What should you do if you are given a leaking package to load? Refuse the load. Once you accept it, that leak is your responsibility. Never load a package that isn't perfectly sealed. That's all for the Ohio Hazmat Review. Study these points well and you'll be one step closer to your